and welcome to the next episode of Mystery Unsolved. I'm, of course, your host. You know why we're here. We just did the mysterious death of Michelle Von Emster. This one, I told you, is going to be a little bit unique in the instance that it's not a death, nor is it a disappearance. This one is a museum heist. I don't think I've ever done a museum heist here on Mystery Unsolved, so this is going to be a treat. I am at my usual website where I can read and analyze. Also, I believe this might have been a BuzzFeed Unsolved episode as well. In the event that it was, I will go onto their website as well. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the Gardner Museum heist, or theft, whichever you prefer. In the early morning hours of March 18th, 1990, 13 works of art were stolen from the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston. In Boston, yeah. One moment. Did that help at all? A little bit? Hold on. There we go. Now you can see me. Now you can see me. Security guards admitted two men posing as policemen responding to a disturbance call, and the thieves bound the guards and looted the museum over the next hour. The case is unsolved. No arrests have been made, and no works have been recovered. The stolen works have been valued at hundreds of millions of dollars by the FBI and art dealers. The museum offers a $10 million reward for the information leading to the art's recovery, the largest bounty ever offered by a private institution. The reason for this is, I'm sure, as we will find out, who the art was made by. That is always going to be a big factor when it comes to stolen art, yes? The stolen works were originally procured by art collector Isabella Stewart Gardner and were intended for permanent display at the museum with the rest of her collection. Oh, okay. Among them was the concert, one of only 34 known paintings by Johannes Vermeer. See what I mean? And thought to be the most valuable unrecovered painting in the world. Also missing is The Storm of the Sea by Galilei, Rembrandt's only seascape. Oh, sorry. Also missing is The Storm on the Sea of Galilee, Rembrandt's only seascape. A Rembrandt painting. Now do you see why the museum's like, yeah, a $10 million reward. It's probably, you could probably make more, but the museum's like, we're not going to give people that much money. But $10 million is still a hell of a lot is probably the biggest reward ever. But what I'm saying is, given what the paintings are probably worth, other paintings and sketches by Rembrandt, Edgar Degas, Edouard Manet, and Govert Flinck were also stolen, along with a relatively valueless eagle fennel and Chinese goo. Experts were puzzled by the choice of artwork, as more valuable works were left untouched. As the collection and its layout are intended to be permanent, empty frames remain hanging both in the home homage to the missing works and as placeholders for their return. So if I went to this museum in Boston, I would see these empty frames. And I wouldn't need to know why they're empty because I would now know. And knowing me, since I'm doing a case on this, I would probably ask the art people, like, hey, I read about this. I did a whole case on this. I'm just curious. Has there been any word since 1990 about these paintings? And see what they could tell me. Hell, I probably should have done that before I did the episode, but I didn't know it was in Boston, so that's on me. The FBI believes that the robbery was planned by a criminal gang. The case lacks strong physical evidence, and the FBI has largely depended on interrogations, undercover informants, and sting operations to collect information. It has focused primarily it has focused primarily on the Boston Mafia, which was in the midst of an internal gang war during the period. One theory holds that gangster Bobby Donati organized the heist to negotiate for his uh, Capri- Caparegime's release from prison. Donati was murdered 1 year after the robbery. Other accounts suggest that the paintings were stolen by a gang in Boston's Dorchester neighborhood, although these suspects deny any involvement, despite the fact that a sting operation resulted in several prison sentences. All have denied any knowledge or have provided leads that proved fruitless, despite the offer of reward money and reduce or cancel prison sentences if they had disclosed information leading to the recovery of the artwork. Okay, so there's still a lot for me to read about this case, but one thing that I find very interesting is that the FBI was like, let's look into the Boston Mafia. Let's look into this. I'm actually 50-50 on this. One, because again, given the time, the Boston Mafia was still very much the New England Mafia, if you will. But yeah, Boston Mafia, obviously we think of Boston Mafia, we think Whitey Bulger. But there was others, right? But I think that the FBI is like, we want they want to pin it on the mafia because at the time they were up to no good and they wanted a reason to catch them. Hey, look, are they also behind the art paintings stealing? The art heists? I can't talk. But at the same time, I'm like, how how into how into art are some mafiosos, or were they? The robbery occurred on early Sunday, March 18th, 1990. The thieves were first witnessed around 12:30 a.m. by several St. Patrick's Day revelers, leaving a party near the museum. Oh yeah, it was the day after. Oh, the day after St. Patrick's Day. That's right. Okay. Has anyone thought this? Because obviously they know that people are going to be partying in bars, Irish, Boston. The two men were disguised as police officers and parked in a hatchback on Palace Road, about 100 feet from the side entrance. The witnesses believed them to be policemen. Yeah. The museum guards on duty that night were Rick Abbott, age 23, and Randy Heasted, age 25. Abbott was a regular, a bath, a bath? Yeah, was a regular night watchman, but Heasted seldom worked that night shift. The museum security police required that one guard would patrol the galleries with a flashlight and walkie-talkie, while the other would sit at the security desk. This is literally the most cliche thing I've ever heard about security people in an art museum. Because any movie or TV show I've ever watched, this is exactly what they did. And wouldn't you know it, in real life, that's what security does in art museums. So if I ever become a security guard or officer at an art museum, I know what my job would be. It seems pretty straightforward. The museum security department. When Abath took the first patrol, fire alarms sounded in several rooms, but he could not locate any fire or smoke. He returned to the security room where the fire alarm control panel indicated smoke in multiple rooms. He assumed that some type of malfunction had occurred and disabled the panel before returning to his patrol. Before completing his rounds, Abbott stopped at the side entrance of the museum, briefly opening the side door and shutting it again without informing Heasted. Abbott returned to the security desk around 1 o'clock a.m., and Heasted assumed patrol duties. At 1:20 a.m., the thieves drove to the side entrance, parked and walked to the side door. They rang the buzzer, which connected them to a bath through an intercom. They explained to a bath that they were police investigating a disturbance and that they must be admitted. A bath could see them on the closed circuit television wearing what appeared to be police uniforms. He was not aware of any disturbance, but he surmised that a St. Patrick's Day reveler may have climbed over the fence, causing someone to report it to the police. Abbott admitted the men at 1:24 a.m. So, red flag. Didn't a bath assume, or didn't he think something was kind of, the timing was a little fishy here? He literally just turned off the fire alarms. And then, like 20 minutes later, police officers are there. Did he, and he's the one that's always working at night. So didn't he surmise that, like, oh, well, I didn't hit the button and tell them to come, but maybe, like, if anything happens in this museum, even though I'm here and I shut it off, police still have to come. You get what I mean? Like, he didn't think of that. Also, if he's like really suspicious and he's a real hardcore security guard, which clearly he was not, he would think, gee, like, are these guys police officers? They look like that, they dress like that. But he didn't even make that assumption, which is fine because not many people would. But I just don't get why he wouldn't be like, oh, they're here because of the fire alarm incident. But no, he just chalks it up to something else entirely. The thieves first entered a locked foyer that separated the side door from the museum. They approached a bath at the security desk and asked if anyone else was in the museum. A bath radioed he stand to return to the security desk. Abbott noticed around this time that the taller man's mustache appeared to be fake. The shorter man told the bath that he looked familiar and that he may have had a warrant for his arrest, demanding that a bath emerge from behind the desk to provide an identification. A bath complied, leaving the desk that contained the museum's only panic button that could alert police. Okay, that's what I was wondering. The shorter man forced a bath against the wall, spread his legs, and handcuffed him. Heaston walked into the room around this time, and the taller thief turned him toward the wall and handcuffed him. With both guards handcuffed, the thieves revealed their true intentions to rob the museum and asked the guards not to cause any problems. The thieves wrapped duct tape around the heads and eyes of the guards. Without asking for directions, they led the guards into the basement where the guards were handcuffed to a steam pipe and workbench. The thieves examined the guards' wallets and threatened that they knew where the guards lived and told them that if they would not inform the authorities, they would receive a reward in about a year. Oh, I gotta hear this at the end. It took the thieves less than 15 minutes to subdue the guards, which they completed at about 1:35 a.m. The thieves' movements through the museum were recorded on infrared motion detectors. Steps in the first room they entered, the Dutch room on the second floor, were not recorded until 1:48 a.m. This was 13 minutes after they had finished subduing the guards, perhaps waiting to ensue that police had not been alerted. As the thieves approached the paintings in the Dutch room, a sensor sounded that was intended to alert when patrons moved too close to the artwork, and the thieves smashed the device. They removed the Storm on the Sea of Galilee and A Lady and a Gentleman in Black from the wall and threw them on the marble floor, which shattered their glass frames. Using a blade, they cut the canvases out of their stitches. They also removed a large Rembrandt self-portrait oil painting from the wall but left it leaning against the cabinet. Investigators believe that the thieves may have considered it too large to transport, potentially because it was painted on wood and not canvas like the others. The thieves instead took a small postage stamp sized self-portrait etching by Rembrandt on display beneath the larger portrait. On the right side of the room, they removed Landscape with Obelisk and The Concert from their frames. The final piece taken from the room was an ancient Chinese goo. So, this is going to sound like a really weird thing for me to say, but I don't think that the thieves really had any idea of the paintings that they wanted to steal. Because remember, I originally read in the beginning that there were other more valuable paintings in the museum, which leads me to believe two things. One, these guys had no freaking idea of what paintings they were taking, and they were just kind of like, "Well, we're gonna rob this museum. Let's take some paintings. What paintings? Any of them." Maybe they kind of sort of looked at Rembrandt and were like, "Oh, but Rembrandt, that's a popular painter, but this is too big," and they just grabbed something small by him anyway. Or they had been to this museum before as people, coming in and taking in all the paintings and decided that they liked these particular paintings. It could be either or, but I definitely don't think that they're just like taking these paintings in particular without a reason. At 1:51 a.m., which one thief continued working on the Dutch room, the other entered a narrow hallway dubbed the Short Gallery on the other end of the second floor. Soon both men were in the Short Gallery. When they began removing screws from a frame displaying a Napoleonic flag, likely an effort to steal the flag. They appeared to have abandoned the effort as some screws were not removed, and they ultimately took one only the exposed eagle final atop the flagpole. They also took 5 Degas sketches from the room. The last work stolen was the Ches Tortoni from the Blue Room on the first floor. The museum's motion detectors did not detect any motion within the Blue Room during the thief's time in the building. The only footsteps detected in the room that night were Bath's during the 2 times he had passed through the gallery on his earlier patrol. As he prepared to leave, the thieves checked the guards again and asked if they were comfortable. The thieves then moved to the security director's office, where they took the video cassettes that contained evidence of their entrance from the closed circuit cameras, as well as data printouts from the motion detecting equipment. The movement data was also captured on a hard drive, which remained untouched. The frame for the Ches Tortoni was left at the security director's desk. The thieves then began to remove the artwork from the museum. The side entrance doors were opened at 2:40 a.m. and again for the last time at 2:45 a.m. The robbery lasted 81 minutes. So 81 minutes, for those that can't really decipher how much time that is in time time time, that is a little over an hour and 21 minutes. So again, I don't think these guys were at all professionals. That's why I don't think it was the mafia. If this was the mafia, I feel like it would have been way more clean. Way more clean. I would say that the mafia robbing an art museum would be like the equivalent of an art thief expert. I could be totally wrong. Maybe I'm giving the mafia too much credit. But I just feel like they would have been way more clean. These two seem like amateurs to me. Absolute amateurs. They're using duct tape and handcuffing the guards. Well, they have the handcuffs, okay. They're duct taping the guards. They're taking certain paintings. They're asking the guards if they're okay. Again, they just, I don't know. If this was like a professional art thief, like Pink Panther, like, ain't nobody gonna know half the shit that they did. And I wouldn't be reading it if we did, if that's how it was. So I think these two guys were amateurs. The next guard shift arrived later in the morning and realized that something was amiss when they could not establish contact with anyone inside for admittance. They called the security director, who entered the building with his keys and found nobody at the watch desk before calling the police. The police searched the building and found the guards still bound in the basement. 13 works were stolen. In 1990, the FBI estimated the value of the theft at $200 million and raised the estimate to 500 by 2000. In the late 2000s, some art dealers suggested that the total value of stolen artwork could be 600 million. It is considered the highest valued museum robbery in history. But yet at the time, think about that. At the time that they took those paintings, there were more valuable paintings that they could have taken. So this in itself is the highest value museum robbery in history at 600 million. But had they taken the other more valuable paintings, we could be sitting here talking about $1 billion art heist. The most valuable works were taken from the Dutch room. We already know this. Okay. Okay. The eclectic mix of items has puzzled experts. While some of the paintings were valuable, the thieves passed other valuable works by Raphael, Botticelli, and Michelangelo and left them undisturbed, opting to take relatively valueless items such as the goo and the finial. Raphael and Michelangelo, two of the Ninja Turtles, two famous painters, right? Artists. And they took two items that are just valued, worthless. Again, I think they did this because one, they're amateurs, and two, they just happen to like these items. Or maybe they're idiots and they thought, hey, these might be valuable. The thieves did not enter the third floor, where Titian's The Rape of Euphoria hung, which is among the most valuable paintings in the city. See what I mean? As Gardner's will decreed that nothing in her collection should be moved, the empty frames for the stolen paintings remain hanging in their respective locations in the museum as placeholders for the potential return. Because of the museum's low funds and lack of an insurance policy, the director solicited help from Sotheby's and Christie's auction houses to post a reward of 1 million within 3 days. This increased to 5 million in 1997. In 2017, it was doubled to 10 million with an expiration date set for the end of the year. This reward was extended following an outpouring of tips from the public. It is the largest bounty ever offered by a private institution. The reward is for information that leads directly to the recovery of all of their items in good condition. Federal prosecutors have stated that anyone who willingly returns the items will not be prosecuted. The statute of limitations expired in 1995 as well, so the thieves and anyone else who participated in the theft cannot be prosecuted. How about that, huh? The FBI took immediate control of the case on the grounds that the artwork could likely cross state lines. Investigators have called the case unique for its lack of strong physical evidence. It is unknown if the thieves left DNA evidence. Although fingerprints and footprints were found at the scene, it could not be concluded whether they were from the thieves or from the museum employees. The FBI has performed DNA analysis in the years following the theft as evidence, as advances in the field have grown. Some of the I can't talk. Some of the evidence has been lost among the agency files. The guards and witnesses in the street described one thief as about 5'9" to 5'10", in his late 30s with a medium build, and the other as 6 feet, in his early 30s with a heavier build. Security guard Richard Abath was investigated at an early stage because of his suspicious behavior on the night of the theft. While on patrol, Abath briefly opened and closed a side door, a move that some believe could have been a signal to the thieves parked outside. Abath told authorities that he opened and closed the door routinely to ensure that it was locked. One of Bath's colleagues told journalists that if a Bath had opened the door routinely as he maintained, supervisors would have noticed him doing so from their computer printouts and stopped the behavior. So he was doing something he thought he was supposed to be doing, only he wasn't. Suspicious was has surrounded the museum's motion detectors, which did not detect any movement from in the blue room. During this time, the thieves were in the museum. The only footsteps recorded in the room that night were at Bath's during his security patrol. A security consultant reviewed the motion detector equipment several weeks after the theft and determined it was operating correctly. In 2015, the FBI released a security video from the museum on the night before the theft, showing a Bath admitting an unidentified man into the museum to converse at the security desk. Abath told investigators that he could not recall the incident or recognize the man, and the FBI requested the public's assistance. Several former museum guards came forward and identified the stranger as the museum's deputy security chief. Abath, who died in 2024 at age 57, maintained his innocence throughout his life. The FBI agent overseeing the case in its early years concluded that the guards were too incompetent and foolish to have committed the crime. Whitey Bulger. Whitey Bulger was one of the most powerful crime bosses in Boston during the era, heading the Winter Hill Gang. He denied involvement and, in fact, dispatched his subordinates to identify the culprits because the robbery was committed within his area and he wanted to be paid tribute. Leave it to fucking Whitey Bulger to be like, I didn't do this, but FBI, I want to know who did this just as much as you do. Guys, if I know who did it, I want that $10 million reward. FBI agent Thomas McShane investigated Bulger to determine his involvement. He determined that Bulger's strong ties with the Boston police could explain how the thieves acquired legitimate police uniforms, or perhaps that real police were arranged to perform the heist. Bulger also had ties to the Provisional Irish Republican Army. McShane identified the act of tripping fire alarm before the heist as a calling card of the IRA and its rival UVF, the Ulster Volunteer Force. Both organizations had agents in Boston at the time, and both had previously demonstrated the capability to organize art heists. McShane's investigation of Bulger and the IRA did not produce any evidence to tie them to the theft. According to Charlie Hill, a retired art and antiquities investigator for Scotland Yard, Bulger gave the Gardner works to the IRA. They are most likely in Ireland. So he's saying that Bulger stole the paintings, and they're in Ireland. Interesting. Okay. In 1994, museum director Anne Hawley received an anonymous letter from someone who claimed to be attempting to negotiate a return of the artwork. The writer explained that they were a third-party negotiator and did not know the identity of the thieves. They explained that the artwork was stolen to reduce a prison sentence. But as the opportunity had passed, there was no longer a motive to keep the artwork, and they wanted to negotiate a return. The writer explained that the artwork was being held in a non-common law country under climate-controlled conditions. They wanted immunity for themselves and all others involved, and $2.6 million for return of the artwork, which would be sent to an offshore bank account at the same time the art was handed over. If the museum was interested in negotiating, they should print out a coded message in the Boston Globe. To establish credibility, the writer conveyed information only known by the museum and the FBI at the time. Hawley felt this was a strong lead. She contacted the FBI, who then contacted the Globe. The coded message was printed in the May 1st, 1994 edition of the Boston Globe. Hawley received a second letter a few days later in which the writer acknowledged the museum was interested in negotiating, but they had become fearful of what they perceived was a massive investigation by federal and state authorities to determine their identity. The writer explained that they needed time to evaluate their options, but Hawley never heard from the writer again. Also, remember in 1995 the statute of limitations expired. So if this person was serious, all they had to do was wait a year, and then negotiate again. Brian McDivitt. Brian McDivitt was a con man from Boston who tried to rob the Hyde collection in Glen Falls, New York in 1981. He was dressed up as a FedEx driver, carried handcuffs and duct tape, and planned to steal a Rembrandt. He was also a known flag aficionado and fit the description of the larger robber except for his thinning red hair. These parallels to the Gardner case fascinated the FBI, so they interviewed him in late 1990. McDivitt denied any involvement and refused to take a polygraph test. When people refuse to take polygraph tests, it baffles me. Doesn't that mean they're guilty? The FBI ran his fingerprints, which did not match any of those at the crime scene. McDivitt later moved to California and conned his way into television and filmmaking. He died in 2004. Boston Mafia, we already kind of looked into that. Yeah, it's a whole bunch for the Mafia. But I'm going to just not do that. We already got Whitey Bulger, which is good enough for me. The number of paintings attributed to Vermeer is disputed. The Gardner Museum's reward has only been exceeded by the U.S. government's $25 million bounty for Osama bin Laden. That's the only other bounty that they've. That's interesting. All right. That was a bit of a doozy. I told you it was a special and unique case, right? This was going to be a unique episode. So, what do we think happened? Who do we think did it? So, we have three. We have a couple of experts. We have a couple of suspects. Sorry. All right. Do we think Rickabath, the security guard, had anything to do with it? I personally don't think he did. I think the whole window thing can be attributed to maybe something that the head security chief told him to do, like that night, or I don't know. I don't think he did it. I don't think he was involved. Okay. Woody Bulger. I'm not gonna lie. This one intrigues me. If something is amiss in Boston at that time, of course you can put Woody Bulger's name on it. But I do think that obviously why Whitey Bulger could have been a suspect, it's absolutely typical of him to say that he didn't do it, but he wanted to get paid to find out who did. Which of course, if it was his own men, but of course we know now that it wasn't Whitey Bulger or his men because they could have easily have concocted an idea to do this. And also, Bulger wouldn't have left the country in 1995 if it had been. You know what I mean? So we know that's not the case. The 94 museum, I don't, the 94 letter to the museum, I don't think that was legit. Because again, a year went by, statute of limitations expired. Maybe they didn't know that, but Brian McDivitt, he sounds like the best possibility, but you can't really explain for his red hair. But technically, he had all the stuff that happened. I think maybe Brian McDivitt was actually involved, although they said that his DNA was not there, right? But he refused to take a polygraph. So anybody that refuses to take a polygraph, I'm automatically like, they did it. They did it. I think Brian McDivitt was involved. That's what I think. And I don't think it was the mafia. I think it was McDivitt and somebody else. What do you think? Do you think Rick Bath was the security guard? Do you think he was involved? Do you think Whitey Bulger did it? The mafia? Do you think Brian McDivitt did, like I do, with an accomplice? Do let me know below in the comments. And if you're not already doing so, be sure to subscribe to my channel so you know anytime that I go live. This has been a very interesting evening for Mystery Unsolved. Two really intriguing cases in the first ever art heist case that I've done. So definitely, I mean, if I can do more of these, it'll be unfortunate. But if there's more art heists that are unsolved, I will gladly do episodes on them. Do stay tuned for next Friday's episode as I will be focusing on the mysterious disappearance of Louis LaPrince. For Mystery Unsolved, this is Justin Bienvenu. Have a good night.